It's time for our main speech, and here to introduce our speaker is past President Nancy Lux. Nancy?
Michael Heavey grew up in the Montlake area and graduated from Garfield High in 1965. He joined the Army and as an officer served in Vietnam and was awarded the Bronze Star, Air Medal, and more. Back in the States, he graduated from the University of Washington and Santa Clara University School of Law in California. Home again, he settled in West Seattle, where he was elected to the state's House of Representatives for 6 years and the Senate for 8 years. In 2000, he was elected and appointed Superior Court judge by Governor Gary Locke. Mike is married, has three adult children, and has climbed Mount Rainier the past 4 summers. He is speaking today from a personal perspective, not from his judicial capacity, about Amanda Knox, neighbor, classmate, and friend of his daughter. Let's welcome Justice Mike Heavey.
Thank you, Nancy, for that very kind introduction. And thank you, Rotarians, for being willing to listen to me for a few minutes today. And thank you, Rotarians, for all of your service that you've rendered to our community, to our state, country, and indeed the world. I honor Rotary. I love the four-way test, and I love your dedication to public service. Groucho Marx once said, "I was married by a judge, but I should have had a jury." So for the next 20 minutes, I'll be a judge or maybe a lawyer, and you be the jury. So raise your hand if you think Amanda Knox is innocent. Okay, that's great. Put them down. Raise your hand if you don't know. She could be involved or whatever. Okay, please put your hands down. I'm not going to ask if anybody thinks she's guilty because I don't think that's probably the case. If you do, please keep an open mind. I'm here today to convince you that Amanda Knox is absolutely 100% innocent. I used to get real angry about the case, but now it's mainly I'm just sad. I'm sad because what happened in Perugia, Italy, a sister city of Seattle. It's a city about 120 miles north of Rome in central Italy. Sad that a small group of incompetent and corrupt police have besmirched the reputation of good and honest police officers around the world. Sad that this small group of dishonest and corrupt police officers have ruined the lives of 2 good young people. Wrongfully imprisoned Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito for 4 years. And probably for as long as they live, some people will believe that they might have been involved in the murder. I'm going to tell you some facts that you probably haven't heard before that hasn't been reported in the media in Seattle. I think you're going to find it very interesting. A little bit more background. In 1969, I was a lieutenant in Vietnam in the 1st Cavalry Division. My assignment was a prisoner of war. My assignment was in being in charge of a prisoner of war interrogation unit. In 1976, I became a lawyer. I was a lawmaker serving in Olympia for 14 years. I've been a Superior Court judge for the last 11 and a half years, As a lawyer and a judge, I've been involved in hundreds of criminal trials. I'm a neighbor of Amanda's. She is a friend of my oldest daughter. They carpooled to Seattle Prep High School for 4 years. I've been closely involved with this case since almost the beginning. I got involved for a number of reasons. One was the police theory just did not make sense. This is the theory. Two young college lovebirds having a romantic evening together get up in the middle of the night, go over to Amanda's house, team up with a drifter they did not know, sexually assault and murder Amanda's friend and roommate. That does not make sense. That does not happen. I also became incensed to the lies about Amanda that were being released to the press by the police. At first, I didn't know what to make of it, so I asked my daughter. I said, "What do you think of Amanda Knox?" And she said, "Amanda is the most genuinely kind person I know. She does not have a mean bone in her body." A quick timeline. November 1st, 2007. That's the night of the murder. November 6th, 2007. Amanda, her boyfriend, and a local bar owner are arrested. November 25th, 2007. Killer Rudy Guede is arrested in Germany. October 2008. In a separate trial, Rudy is found guilty. December 5th, 2009. Amanda and Raffaele are found guilty. November 2010, a new appeal judge is appointed. January of 2011, the appeal trial begins. October 3rd, 2011, Amanda and Raffaele found not guilty. What happened to Amanda is a terrible injustice. Wrongfully locked up for 4 years, ridiculed, defamed, but that pales in comparison to what happened to Meredith Kircher. This is a picture of Meredith Kircher, one of Amanda's roommates and friends. She was a beautiful young woman with a bright future. On the night of November 1st, 2007, she was brutally murdered and sexually assaulted. She left behind a devastated family. This bright light went out. I don't think it gets any worse than that. On November 6, 2007, the police called this press conference. Based upon an all-night interrogation of Amanda, they had arrested her, her boyfriend, and a bar owner by the name of Patrick. They announced caso chiuso, case closed. The man on the left is the bar owner, Patrick Lumumba. Kind of a small picture, but the police had a hunch he was the killer because he knew the victim and he knew Amanda. After a 14-hour, all-night interrogation, they coerced Amanda at 5:45 a.m. into naming Patrick as the killer. They applied rather standard interrogation techniques, lying to her, good cop, bad cop, what we used to call in Vietnam, Mutt and Jeff. Denied her food, water, most importantly, denied her sleep. They rotated fresh teams of police officers to keep them fresh and to keep her in an extreme state of duress. Quick question, does anyone believe that John McCain is a war criminal? I think not, but that's what he signed a confession to in 1967 in a North Vietnamese prisoner of war camp. What I've learned about interrogations is eventually a person who's being put under pressure will tell the interrogator not the truth, but what they want to hear. The police wanted to hear that Patrick was the killer. The bar owner was the killer. The problem was that was not true. Luckily for Patrick, he had an ironclad alibi, and about 2 weeks later, he was released. They captured Rudy Guadet in Germany, the real killer. Amanda and her boyfriend stayed in jail. Everything else remained the same. This is not a whodunit mystery. This man, Rudy Guadet, is the killer. In a separate trial, he was convicted and sent to prison for 30 years. This is a no-brainer. He's what we call in King County a sexual violent predator, SVP. He should be locked up for the rest of his life. The evidence against him is overwhelming. He admits to being present during the murder. Her blood, his handprint. Her blood, his shoe prints. A vaginal swab of the victim has his DNA. He's a known burglar. He fled the country to Germany, and even when he was found 3 weeks after the murder, he still had cuts in his hand. In his own words, immediately after the murder, he went home, cleaned up, and went out dancing at a disco to establish an alibi. The next day, he fled to Germany. He doesn't know Amanda or Raffaele. There's a proverb in the Bible: the wicked flee when no one pursues. No one was after Rudy, nobody, and he fled to Germany. His story was he claimed the victim and he were friends, that they were doing some heavy smooching, and someone else, while he was on the toilet, came in and killed her, and he struggled with the man as he ran out the door. But I think the number one reason that tells me he's the killer, besides all the obvious evidence, is that to the following question, he didn't have an answer. The question was, if Meredith was your friend and someone else killed her, why didn't you call the police or an ambulance? He didn't have a good answer. I submit only a killer would run. I submit a friend would try to save her, to help her. He's a sexual violent predator. He should be locked up for the rest of his life. This is the big mystery. Why Amanda? The police had announced caso accuso. They didn't want to look like fools. They had already been made fools to look like fools by Amanda because on her statement, they arrested Patrick and they had to let him go. So the real mystery in this case is why the police went after Amanda like a pack of jackals. Another mystery is why we, seeing a modern-day witch trial happen right before our very eyes, why we didn't see it, why we turned the other way. The police lied over and over. They destroyed evidence, and in my opinion, they planted evidence. The police fed a voracious tabloid media with lies about the evidence and lies about Amanda's character. The number one red flag that Amanda's first trial was bogus is the following facts. Victim is found naked on the floor. Underneath her body is a pillow that the killer placed there. And on that pillowcase is a semen stain. Here's the fact you don't know. The police did not test the DNA of the semen stain. During the trial, the defense said, "Judge, please test. Make them test the stain for DNA." The prosecution vehemently opposed that request, and the judge agreed it should not be tested. This is a sexual assault and murder case, and the police, prosecution, and judge feel it is unnecessary to test the semen for DNA. Unbelievable, but true. I would submit that the individual that left that semen stain is the killer. That's his signature. So the first trial was a sad joke. I'd call it a kangaroo court, except that would be a step up and an insult to marsupials everywhere. So you might say, "Judge, how do you get a conviction without any credible evidence?" And the short answer is you create a climate of hatred towards the defendant. In dealing with the media, the American rule is that prosecutors and police are not allowed to release any information to the media that would heighten the public condemnation of the accused. The reason: to protect the defendant's right to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence. It's the same rule in Italy. Segreto istruttorio. Did I pronounce that right, Art? Thank you. So to get a conviction without evidence, you create a climate of hatred toward the defendant. They did this by using lie after lie about Amanda's character and supposed evidence that never existed. They literally created a devil. By the time Amanda went to trial, this kind and gentle soul was the most hated person in Italy. She never had a chance. December 5th, 2009, Amanda and Raffaele are found guilty, sentenced to long prison terms. However, as we all know, it wasn't over. You might say, "Judge, you're too close. You're a neighbor, a friend, you're biased." Okay, let me ask you another question. What do Democrat U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell and former Republican candidate for President Donald Trump have in common? And it's not that they have good-looking hair. What they have in common is they both looked at the case and both publicly stated there is no credible evidence against Amanda. No axe to grind. This was the same conclusion of CBS, CNN, ABC, all of them got on board. The New York Times, the Seattle Times, the Christian Science Monitor, The Economist have all editorialized. There is no evidence against Amanda Knox. It's happening in Italy too. About a year before the acquittal, one of the major magazines, OG, had a picture, and right on the front it said, "Innocente," innocent. And also, 11 members of the parliament in Italy wrote the president of Italy and say, "Please investigate what's going on in Perugia. There is no evidence against these young people. How are we going to compensate 2 young people for 4 years in prison? Please investigate, Mr. President." CBS hired a renowned Chicago investigator by the name of Paul Cialino. He went to Perugia, investigated the case, and I think he summed it up best. This is the railroad job from hell. For whatever reason, an amazing thing, almost a miracle, happened in November 2010. A Perugia judge was assigned to handle the appeal. Right at the last minute, the powers in Rome appointed a northern Italian judge, Judge Hellman, to preside over the appeal trial. Judge Hellman has a stellar reputation in Italy as a judge. He's known for his integrity, his courage, and his intelligence. He, an assistant judge, and 6 lay professional jurors looked at this case intensely for 11 months, and he acquitted Amanda, they acquitted Amanda and Raffaele on October 3rd, 2011. In Italy, you can have 2 ways to be acquitted. One is not enough evidence to find beyond a reasonable doubt that defendants are guilty. The other reason is they are innocent, and that's what he said. They did not commit the crime. He noted in his written opinion the substantive non-existence of evidence. There it is. There is no evidence against these 2. And as to their character, and he almost said in a little bit different way what I said 4 years ago. It doesn't make sense. He said, 2 young people, good and open to others, to suddenly choose to do evil for evil's sake, just like that, in fact, was not probable. This is the Seattle Times on October 5th, 2011. It's a picture of Amanda and her mother at SeaTac. Amanda Knox is a Seattle native. She was born here, raised here, she grew up here. She graduated from one of our high schools. She was then and is now an honor student at the University of Washington. She is one of our own. She should not be laughed at, ridiculed, or defamed with inferences that she may have been involved. That is simply should not happen. If you hear that, I ask all Rotarians, if you ever hear something like that, apply the 4-way test and say, is that the truth? I don't think that's the truth. Because there's more here than just being locked up for 4 years. It's what her character was assassinated, and it did damage by the hands that said, yeah, I don't know. She might have been involved. Possible. So I hope I have convinced you that Amanda Knox is absolutely 100% innocent. And she is exactly like my daughter said 4 years ago. Amanda is the most genuinely kind person I know. She does not have a mean bone in her body. Thank you all so much for listening.
We do have time for questions. Greg?
Thank you, sir. Some of us weren't aware of the differences in the judicial system of Italy and the United States until we read so much about this case, but you talk about the corruption in Perugia. Is this something that's widespread, normal, or is this very unique to how justice is?
I really can't speak. There are commentators in Italy who believe there are defendants that are charged with murder all over Italy and then later released because the police messed up. It's somewhat a dysfunctional system in a lot of ways. But, you know, we have wrongful convictions in this country too, so I'm not going to make any judgments. Italy has tremendous sets of laws. They're different than ours, but they're just sometimes not observed. Amanda had not the right to have an attorney, which she asked for, but under their law, she had to have an attorney present when she was interrogated. They didn't do that. She had to, under their law, have an interpreter because she didn't speak Italian. Wasn't done. She had to have her interrogation audio recorded or videotaped. It wasn't done. So those were some things that happened right at the beginning. Great laws, but they weren't put into effect, they weren't observed. Because there was this one focus of, we're out to get Patrick, so we're going to ignore all this because she's not the real person we're going after. Yes, sir.
Judge
Oh.
Heavey?
Oh,
over
okay.
here. Sorry,
Art?
Art Mazzola.
I echo all of what you've said, and I've had to defend her here and in Italy, and the damage has been done. I don't know if in her lifetime that can change. But speaking to her kindness, I've met her recently and talked to her. She still holds a great love for all the people of Italy. She has no hate at all in her bones. And there's some talk in Italy, and it's just talk, that the prosecutors there have much too much power, far beyond what our prosecutors have. And it's talk, it'll go away. This same prosecutor is under indictment himself for a similar case just north of there. And the fellow who committed the murder had been arrested just north of there for a similar break-in, using the same modus here, breaking a window. And we've been to that, and I've been to that site, and it's on a dead-end street where in the night he could get in. And he was a friend of people living in the lower level of the house, so he knew his way around that house. There's all kinds of evidence. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Art.
your remarks.
Thank you. Amanda loves Italy. There was a big call to boycott Italy, and Donald Trump actually called for that, and she said, no, I love Italy. That will hurt too many people. That wouldn't hit the people that have caused the damage.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm sure you're aware of the book, The Monster of Florence.
Absolutely.
I never really understood this case until I read that book, and I just want to invite you to comment briefly, and if you would encourage others to read that.
Monster of Florence, thank you, sir. Monster of Florence by Douglas Preston will be a George Clooney movie here in a year or two. They've already started shooting. But it is an excellent, it was on the New York Times bestseller list. It really puts this whole thing into perspective and how this prosecutor gets manipulated by his own police officers. My character is, I used to think he was evil incarnate, but I just now see him as in the Hogan's Heroes. Remember Sergeant Schultz, you know? That's this prosecutor, but he gets manipulated by these police officers who have an agenda that I don't know where it comes from.
Judge Heavey, all the way to your right, Steve Boyer.
Thank you for your talk. It's pretty obvious that the communications campaign and the strategy outside the courtroom had an awful lot to do with the eventual legal result. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you marshaled that part of the litigation strategy and made it as successful as it was.
Well, you know, I didn't have anything to do with any of that, really. I was a member of a group called Friends of Amanda, which were Ann Bremner, Tom Wright, who is like me, a fellow parent of a prep student, friend of Amanda. We started websites. We got out the word where we could. The whole thing about the Italian lawyers was don't do anything behind the scenes. That if America says something, that'll infuriate the Italians. I personally believe that the Italian ambassador was paying attention when Maria Cantwell got on TV and said, there's no credible evidence. And when Donald Trump said, let's boycott Italy. I believe he called Rome and said, we got a problem here. I don't know if she's guilty or not, but if she is, you'd better get your A-team in there. And I think that's why they sent Judge Hellman in there. If she was going to be found guilty, he could support it. And if she was innocent, he had the courage to stand up and take the flack from the citizens of Italy. And that's exactly what happened.
You didn't mention drugs at all. Was Amanda and her boyfriend involved at all with using drugs?
Amanda and Raffaele smoked marijuana on the night of the murder. Yes, they did. And I'll say this, they're guilty of premarital sex and smoking marijuana. And if we all did 4 years for that, we'd be, might be some of us missing here right now.
Judge Heavey.
I'm not condoning it, I'm just...
Jim Moore.
Thanks very much for clarifying this case. My brother-in-law is mayor of a small town in the boot of Italy.
Really?
And he has a very jaundiced view of the lower court system in Italy. As mayor, his political opponents attacked him several times. Cases were brought with the help of police, et cetera, in terms of the corruption and other things he was accused of. Those cases were upheld but always overturned on appeal. So apparently the appeal process is a little more successful than the lower court, at least by the telling of my brother-in-law.
I've heard that the lower courts are overturned on appeal 50% of the time. And a lot of times it's just political. It's just accepted. It's your duty. If you're anybody, you're going to be found in court accused of something. And you may be convicted with the local prosecutor, but by the time you get to an appeal, that's where the real system comes through. And it's what we would call dysfunctional, and they're at war between the legislative branch and the executive and the judiciary. I mean, and the prosecutors are considered part of the judicial branch of government, and and the politicians can't be critical of the judicial system, which is very left-wing judicial system, very middle to right legislative system, and it's not a good state of affairs. If you get arrested in Italy, and I would recommend until they lock up sexually violent predators, I wouldn't recommend particularly going. But if you get stopped, if you get questioned, just say, I want to go to the embassy. Just say that. That would be my recommendation.
There are two major murder cases in the press right now, one in Afghanistan, one in Florida. And there's enormous amount in the media to prejudice public thinking one way or the other. Could you comment on that?
Well, I think we're all aware of the Afghanistan and the Florida case?
Yes.
Oh, Trayvon Martin. Yes, I mean, those are it's not good for either defendant. Sergeant Bales will be tried in a military court. That's good in terms of public opinion, but bad in terms of the result they're going to feel compelled to deliver. So it's all unfortunate, and I really can't say much more than that. But thank you for asking. Yes.
Yes, Laura Rehrman.
Thank you for your remarks, Judge Heavey. I thought I heard you say at the beginning that there was more that we might have been able to do as citizens as this case broke. And if so, can you tell us what more we might have done to alleviate 4 years?
I don't think I said that.
Oh, thank you.
I wouldn't want to say that. I said something to the effect that we had a global witch trial a witch trial local in a medieval city, literally. I don't like the way she smiled was the kind of testimony you would get in trial. She said an inappropriate word in this place. It's just how they went after witches in the 1700s in Salem. That went global because of the sensationalization, and as a world, we bought off of it, and we didn't look at it with any skepticism. Now, that's just the way it is. I don't know. I like to think. I mean, I saw that because I knew the rule against you don't release any information to the media that would heighten the public condemnation of the accused. Not too many people know that. That's a basic tenet of how you try criminal trials. And that had been violated. That is one reason I picked up on it, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to see that issue. Thank you.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.